Why, hello there. So, after I made my tier list video ranking all the MMA YouTubers, I have come to the realization that, number one, I need to release more videos to help my algorithm, and number two, I can make tier list slop and pick slop, as I like to call it, and still get views. So, today, we will be doing a full card prediction and breakdown of every single fight on UFC 325. And yes, this will be minimally edited compared to my other videos. However, as I learned from my video on the MMA YouTubers, well, it turns out that a lot of people are willing to listen to me ramble on for hours on end. So, here we go. Every single fight on UFC 325 predicted. Let's go. So starting off with the early prelims, we've got the road to UFC finals, and I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know much about these fighters, but I'm going to predict them regardless, because I like to pretend that I have actual ball knowledge that I do not have. But starting off with the flyweight finals, Aaron Tao versus Namsrai Batbayar. And now, from the odds that I've seen, Aaron Tao is apparently a moderate or slight underdog, and I actually really don't understand that, because Aaron Tao, from what I've seen, he's tough, he tends to, fight in the pocket quite a bit, and Aaron Tao is also from New Zealand, which is, part of that Oceania region, which I believe has a much higher level of regional competition than, Batbayar's nation, which is Mongolia. And just to sort of support my point here, one of the wins that Batbayar got on road to UFC was against Yamauchi Wataru, where he got a KO by right hook to hammer fist, right? And the thing is that I've seen Yamauchi Wataru fight on the Japanese regional scene, and he's lost to guys who I would say probably would never ever make it to the UFC. And the fact that Batbayar took him to the second round, I think is a bad sign for Batbayar. So, yes, give me Aaron Tao all day as the underdog here. Sure, he's got a height disadvantage and a slight reach disadvantage, if I'm not mistaken. But I think Aaron Tao has this in the bag. I think Aaron Tao is probably more durable. I think that Batbayar, the fact that he lost to Namjagal Tumendembaro on the regional scene as well, I don't think that's a good sign for him and for his level. So yes, my prediction is going to be Aaron Tao by ground and pound TKO in the first or second round. Now moving on to the next fight up the card, we've got Sulangranbo versus Lawrence Louis. And I'm also going to be taking Lawrence Louis here because, as was the case with Tao versus Batbayar, I just believe that the level of competition on the regional scene in Oceania is just far higher than the regional scene in China, okay? And, Lawrence Louis, he's Asian, I believe he's of Chinese descent, but the fact that he's training out of Australia, he's probably at like some Australian gym, I think that's much better than whatever training environment the Sulangranbo has. So, yes, give me Lawrence Louis. I believe he is going to get it done by decision. And now, we move on to Sebastian Szalay versus Nakamura for the road to UFC featherweight finals. And now, you might think that I'm going to be biased and pick Nakamura here. But no, I'm just going to be completely honest, okay? I think Sebastian is going to do horrible things to Nakamura. And here's why. Nakamura has only been training MMA for 5 to 6 years. And fun fact, before that, he was in the Japanese self-defense forces. So he does have a physical backbone there. But the problem that I believe Nakamura is going to have in this matchup is Sebastian's grappling game. Because Sebastian, he trains out of Mauricio Combat Academy, which is the same gym as Quillen Salkeld and Cody Haddon. And this is just my personal opinion, but I firmly believe that Romel Luistro is one of the most underrated coaches in MMA right now. The fact that Romel Luistro, who is running this small gym in Australia, has produced 2 UFC fighters, Cody Haddon and Quillen Salkeld. And the fact that Sebastian Szalay is now made it to the Road to UFC finals. I believe that just shows his talent and his ability as a coach. And I believe that Mauricio has probably done his homework on Nakamura. Because the thing with Nakamura is, he is basically a pure striker. Like, he has a very, very good left hand. He's got a good right hook. He's got good footwork. But he hasn't been tested in the grappling department before. And if you look at Nakamura's fights on Road to UFC, he's been fighting basically exclusively strikers, okay? And the strikers that he's fought on Road to UFC, like Lee Kaiwan, Nakamura has a significant reach advantage on them. That size advantage is not going to exist when he fights Sebastian. So I believe that Sebastian is going to get it done. I think that Sebastian is probably going to be doing things like kicking out Nakamura's lead leg with the inside low kick. I think that Sebastian is going to be mixing it up with his grappling and wrestling. And I think Sebastian is going to get it done by submission in the first or second round. And by the way, Nakamura, his only pro loss, it comes by submission. And one other point I'll say is that the regional promotion that Nakamura built his record in, it was in Grachan. And now, Grachan in Japan, in Japanese MMA, Grachan is considered to be sort of like a second tier to like lower level regional promotion as opposed to Pancrase, Deep, or Shudo. And I can attest to this because I know guys who were 0-3 in regional promotions like Pancrase, who then went on to become champions in Grachan. So yeah, I think Sebastian is going to kind of blow Nakamura out of the water, and everybody in Japan is just gonna be really depressed about it. But, you know, we're gonna be able to watch Koji Horiguchi beat up Amir Albazi next week, so we'll recover, and things will be great after that. Now, next, we've got Dalmar Fan versus Kim. And here, I've also got to pick Dalmar Fan, because Dalmar Fan, he's training out of Australia. He's fought Quillan Salkiel twice, and he's lost to Quillan Salkiel twice. Dalmar Fan has faced a far harder road of competition than Kim. And I believe that edge and experience is also going to help Dalmar Fan get it done. I believe that Dalmar Fan, he's probably going to TKO Kim. And I believe that basically the Road to UFC finals are just going to be a bunch of Aussies showing levels against the Asian competition. Yeah. But, you know, as a fellow mixed race, half Asian, half white guy, I'm going to be really happy for Dalmar Fan because I believe he's going to show Kim levels. And now, moving on to an actual UFC fight. For the early prelim headliner, we've got Yizha versus Kaan Ofli. And now, everybody's predicting Yizha, and I'm predicting Yizha will get it done as well. I think that Kaan Ofli, he could have a chance against Yizha if he mixes in the grappling well, if he makes sure to take Yizha's back, do all of that. But Yizha, I think, is a far superior striker to Kaan Ofli. And if you look at the ways that Kaan Ofli loses, the way that he lost to Myron Santos on the finals of the Ultimate Fighter, things like that, I think Yizha is going to find the chin. I think he's going to do it with something like a left hook, or maybe like a right straight. And yeah, I just don't like Kaan Ofli's striking. And furthermore, Kaan Ofli, right, he's this very, very compact build, and unlike someone like Volkanovski, he doesn't have the long reach and the long arms or the footwork to really close the distance or to sort of find angles. And as a result, I think Yizha's just going to chin him. Now, moving on, we've got Oban Elliot versus Jonathan Micallef. And now, in this case, I think that Oban Elliot, we saw how he did against the Korean Tyson guy on the UFC Baku card, and I was very, very disappointed in that performance. I don't know what exactly happened to him. But I think that in this fight, I'm taking Jonathan Micallef as the underdog. I think that this fight, it's most likely going to go to a decision because Oban Elliot isn't really a finisher. And Jonathan Micallef, I think he can keep up with Oban. And when you consider the fact that Micallef, you know, he's an Aussie, the judges are going to be there probably in his favor. The crowd is probably going to be on his side. When you consider those factors as well, I think that Micallef is going to get it done by like a 29-28 decision. And Oban Elliot is going to complain about it on Twitter afterwards. Maybe he's going to bitch about it to MMA Guru. Who knows? But yeah, I've got Micallef as an underdog. I think he's going to get it done by a decision. 29-28, maybe a split. And now, moving on, we've got Jacob Malkoun versus the staller himself, Torrez Finney. Now, I see everybody picking Torrez Finney to get it done by decision, and I think there's a definite possibility that's the case. However, if you think back to Torrez Finney's fight against Robert Valentin, remember, that fight went to a split decision because one of the judges awarded every single round to Robert Valentin since Valentin was the only guy throwing strikes. And there's definitely a chance that if Torrez Finney performs in the same way he did against Robert Valentin, who got destroyed by Ryan Loder, who himself has been doing not so well in the UFC, and got blown out of the water by Ateba Gautier, who recently had a little bit of a stinky performance, I think that Jacob Malkoun has a serious chance against Torrez Finney. And the reason why is because as we look at the direction that the UFC has been going in, prioritizing entertainment and damage over, pure control, I think there's a chance that Torrez Finney just falls on the wrong side of the scoring criteria in the UFC and ends up taking down and controlling Jacob Malkoun for the majority of the fight, but still ends up losing because he doesn't do enough damage. So what I can definitely see happening, and this is how I believe the fight is going to turn out, I think that Torrez Finney is going to have a Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Volkov situation happen to him, where he's going to take Malkoun down, but just get beat up from the ground with elbows, punches from the ground, and maybe, Malkoun is going to open up a couple cuts on Torrez Finney's face, something like that. And I think that Malkoun is going to win a split decision. It's going to be close. It's going to be difficult to score, but I just don't think that Torrez Finney's fight style fits the modern UFC scoring criteria. Because the modern UFC scoring criteria, it prioritizes any attempt to finish the fight from whatever position, be it from bottom, from top, wherever. And the thing is that Torrez Finney, we've seen that he doesn't even go for the finish against lower level competition like Robert Valentin. So yes, give me Jacob Malkoun here. Now, moving on, we've got Cam Rowston versus Cody Brundage. And well, we know how Cody Brundage's UFC career has gone. He's had basically every single possible fight outcome, right, in the UFC. He's had a DQ, he's had a no contest, he's had a draw, he's had a KO loss, he's had a KO win. He's got everything. But I think that Cam Rowston is just going to destroy him because Cody Brundage, of course, he's towards the bottom of the level of competition in the middleweight division in the UFC. And Cam Rowston, just looking at him, looking at his record, I think he's going to blow Cody Brundage out of the water. I don't know. There might be some sort of spooky outcome that ends up happening, like a draw or a no contest in this case. But I think Cam Rowston by finish is a good pick here. Now, moving on, we've got Billy Elekana versus Junior Tafa. And well, I've got to pick Billy Elekana because Billy Elekana, he is going to have a significant grappling advantage against Junior Tafa. Right? Billy Elekana uses grappling to beat Ibo Aslan. He submitted his last opponent. And when you think back to how well he did against Bogdan Guskov by taking the back in the first round, and basically he just kind of like gassed out and he ended up, getting finished in the end though, but he still did pretty well against Bogdan Guskov in the first round. And Bogdan Guskov, he knocked out Nikita Krylov and he went to a draw with Jan Blachowicz. So I think that Billy Elekana, he is going to submit Junior Tafa quite early on in the fight, probably in the first or second round. And yeah, when it comes to Junior Tafa, getting taken down, controlled, dominated on the ground, and submitted by Tuko Tokos, that's just a terrible look. Like an awful, awful look. So yes, in this case, I've got Billy Elekana by a quick submission, probably in the first or second round, likely with a rear naked choke. And now, moving on to the main card, and really, going through this fight predictions, it's making me realize how understacked this card is besides the main card. Because I'm going to be honest, almost all of the unranked fights on this card are very low level by UFC standards. But we finally have a good fight, or should I say it won't even be a fight, but it's going to be a good finish. We've got Quillen Salkilled versus Jamie Mullarkey. And of course, we've got to pick Salkilled here. I'm pretty sure that Jamie Mullarkey, he's a ginger, and gingers are a minority. So Quillen Salkilled, he's just going to knock out Jamie Mullarkey probably in the first round. I would be surprised if Jamie even makes it to the second half of the first round. Because Salkilled, right? Salkilled is so good everywhere. He's got the wrestling, he's got the jiu-jitsu, and Salkilled's striking, it's so long and rangy, and he has that perfect straight right hand that could knock out Jamie Mullarkey with ease, I believe. I think Salkilled is just going to knock him out in the first round. And I mean, Jamie's pretty chinny as well. He was getting knocked out by Volkanovski at featherweight back on the regional scene in Australia. Which, granted, that's not a bad loss by any means. But, Salkilled slept Nasrat Haqparast, who was on the verge of getting a ranked opponent. And then, Jamie Mullarkey, he got destroyed by Ruffy, he got destroyed by Nasrat himself. And I think that Quillen Salkilled, he gets it done by basically any way he wants to. He could submit Jamie, he could, knock him down and then submit it, he can knock him out on the feet. Quillen Salkilled will win. This is the number one lock of the card. Now, moving on, we got Tai Tuivasa versus Tallison Teixeira. And man, there's a chance that Tai Tuivasa just kind of flukes it against Tallison Teixeira. There's a chance that he just wings like a left hook or right overhand and just catches Tallison Teixeira and knocks him out. But, well, I just do not trust Tai Tuivasa against anybody now. He's on like a 4-fight loss streak. He's probably going to get cut from the UFC if he loses this one. And the thing with Tallison Teixeira is he's so long and rangy. And I think that taking that loss to Derek Lewis, sure, it hurt his record, but it was likely a learning experience for him. And I think that Tallison Teixeira, he's going to do exactly what he did to Justin Tafa against Tai Tuivasa. He's not going to take a risk boxing with Tai Tuivasa. He's not going to take a risk striking at range with Tai. What Tallison Teixeira is probably going to do, or at least this is what I would do if I was in his situation, he just needs to get himself into the clinch and just elbow and knee Tai Tuivasa repeatedly to the body and head using his height and reach advantage. And since Tallison Teixeira has demonstrated his ability to do that in his fight against Justin Tafa, I've got to pick Tallison here. And, just looking at the momentum, sure, both of these guys are coming off of losses, but I just don't think Tai has the will to continue in this sport. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tai Tuivasa misses weight here, okay? Because the guy was like 320 pounds, 330 pounds while he was taking his break away from MMA. And the thing with MMA is, unless you're completely dedicated and focused in the sport, it's very easy to lose your step. So yeah, I've got Tallison Teixeira by round 1 KO, likely with a right hook or a right elbow, maybe a knee to the body, something like that. I would guess it's going to be a technique from Muay Thai. I'll just say that. Now, we finally get to a good fight. Rafael Fiziev versus Mauricio Ruffy. And yes, it's not pronounced Huffy. It's actually pronounced Ruffy. Because while in Portuguese, you pronounce the R with an H sound, like you do with Shogun Hoa, right? But Mauricio Ruffy is not his real name. Ruffy is actually a reference to the One Piece character Monkey D. Luffy. So yes, in this case, yes, it's pronounced Ruffy. But anyways, I've done some tape study for this fight, and I think that Rafael Fiziev has this in the bag. And the reason why, there's a very specific reason why. Rafael Fiziev has a fantastic switch kick to the body, okay? Like, his switch kick is one of the best in MMA, if not the best. And if you go back and you watch Mauricio Ruffy's fight against Benoit Saint-Denis, Saint-Denis was constantly throwing the left body and high kick from southpaw to get rid of Mauricio Ruffy's strongest weapon, which is his straight right hand. So if Fiziev does the switch kick to the body, make sure to sort of basically force Mauricio Ruffy on the defensive, make sure that he's got his right hand to his chin and tucked up to his body constantly by spamming the left body kick, which, Fiziev specializes in. I think Fiziev is just going to tire Ruffy out. Sure, I know that Fiziev gasses out, but so does Ruffy, as we saw in his fight with James Longtop. So I think that Rafael Fiziev is going to get this fight done by 30-27 decision. I think that he's going to beat up Ruffy to the body. I think he's going to maybe even break Ruffy's arm by forcing him to block so many kicks. And the other thing I have to say is that Ruffy, he has that wide karate stance that allows a lot of back and forth movement. The way that you counter that fighting style is low kicks. And while I wouldn't say that Fiziev has a fantastic right low kick, outside low kick, I think that, Fiziev, he's definitely capable of throwing them. And he can also, of course, throw the inside low kick to the thigh, which he can then use to set up the switch kick to the body as well as the high kick. So yes, I don't think that there's going to be a knockout in this fight, but I believe that Rafael Fiziev, he's going to get it done with volume, he's going to get it done with body shots, and he's just going to make Ruffy wilt. Now moving on to the co-main event, we've got Dan Hooker versus Benoit Saint-Denis, and I'm going to be picking Benoit here. And there's a couple of reasons why. First, if you look at the momentum and the career trajectory of these guys, sure, Benoit had those 2 losses to Poirier and to Renato Moicano, and he took a lot of damage in those fights. But he's on a 3-fight win streak now. He just slept Dariush in the first round at UFC 322. And as opposed to that, Dan Hooker, he's coming off a loss to Arman Tsarukyan. And the thing is that in that Arman fight, while he did get submitted and not knocked out in that fight, he still took some damage. And he also talked about how when Arman headbutted him at weigh-ins for that fight, he broke his nose. And when I hear that, I'm just left to wonder, how many lingering injuries do you have from that fight that might affect you in this one? And well, in this fight, Dan Hooker, he's going to have the slight reach advantage, but when it comes to the size and the girth and the strength, Benoit is going to be much stronger, especially in key positions like the clinch. And the thing is, Benoit isn't a fast fighter. He's not that fast. He's actually quite slow. But Dan Hooker, he's also not that fast. Dan Hooker's always been more about, relying on his durability, relying upon his guard to defend strikes, than moving out of the way of them. And that, I just don't like that against Benoit, who is this really hard hitter. Like, sure, his punches don't have clean or perfect form, but he has a lot of thud to his shots. And that just makes me think that there's a good chance that Benoit Saint-Denis gets it done. And now, I am going to be picking Benoit by decision because I think that Dan Hooker is incredibly tough and pretty durable, but I think that Benoit is just going to literally maraud forward and, spam body kicks, spam head kicks, all to the open side on Dan Hooker. And well, I think it's going to be a dogfight, but I think Benoit is going to come out on top by basically just battering Dan Hooker across the guard, basically. He's just going to, throw more volume. He's going to be pushing Dan Hooker all around the cage, basically with the power and force behind his strikes. And, of course, Benoit Saint-Denis, he has the greater grappling threat. Sure, Dan Hooker, he's got a good guillotine, but besides that, I'm like, well, yeah, sure, you defended takedowns against Mateusz Gamrot, who's a very, very good wrestler and a better wrestler than Benoit. But when it comes to who has the greater submission threat and who has the greater ground and pound threat, I have to say that Benoit Saint-Denis is a far greater threat on the ground than Mateusz Gamrot. So yes, my pick is Benoit Saint-Denis by 29-28 or 30-27 decision. Now, moving on, we've got Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez in the main event in a rematch that nobody asked for. And well, I see a lot of people picking Alexander Volkanovski to win this fight. But I'm going to be picking Diego Lopez, and there's basically two major reasons why I'm doing this. Number one, I know that Left Lane MMA is picking Diego Lopez, and I trust Left Lane's ball knowledge quite a bit because Left Lane was one of the best predictors on MMA YouTube in 2025. So yeah, I'm just going to trust what he says there. But speaking on the technical side of the fight, the reason why Diego Lopez lost to Alexander Volkanovski in the first fight, and Jack Slack made a fantastic video about this, but it's because Diego Lopez just didn't have good footwork in the fight, and he just kind of followed Alexander Volkanovski around the cage while Volkanovski circled to Lopez's left. And now circling to the left allowed Volkanovski to line up his jab and avoid Diego Lopez's right hand. Now, the thing is, Diego Lopez has kind of acknowledged that his footwork in that fight was not good and that he wasn't pressuring effectively. Now, will he be able to fix it by this rematch? I don't know, but the fact that he's aware of that problem makes me think that there is a good chance that Diego Lopez finds a way to get this fight up to the cage and basically box with Volkanovski in the pocket, where, Volkanovski, he's not that great in the pocket, and he also doesn't have the chin to fight in the pocket anymore. So I think there's a solid chance that Diego Lopez just takes his head off with an uppercut or a right hook. Now, of course, there's a solid chance that Volkanovski just outpoints him to decision like he did in the previous fight. But, Volk is also getting older. He's focusing on things other than fighting now, like his cooking channel and stuff like that, which I don't think bodes well for his future as a champion. But, of course, I'm a bigger fan of Volkanovski than I am of Diego Lopez, so maybe, in this case, I'm just picking Diego Lopez to beat Volkanovski because, I can be happy either way, because I would be happy if Volkanovski wins, and I would also be happy if Diego wins because then I would get my pick correct. So maybe I'm just mentally hedging my bets. And the final little bonus reason why I'm going to be picking Diego Lopez here is because this fight is taking place in Australia, alright, on Volk's home turf. And, well, I just see a future where Diego Lopez absolutely starches Volkanovski, and the crowd goes silent, and Volkanovski is like, fuck this, I'm going to retire, mate. I'm going to go and make steaks with Guga Foods, whatever. Like, I can just see the outcome that makes the crowd the most upset happening here. And, well, that's why I'm going to be picking Diego Lopez to get it done by round 2 or round 3 TKO. However, if the fight goes past the third round, I can see Volkanovski easily winning a decision. So yes, this fight can go either way. But if Diego Lopez has patched up that issue with his footwork, which he is well aware of, then he can very easily knock out Volkanovski in this fight. But anyways, those are all of my predictions for UFC 325. I will also likely be making a reaction video because, reactions, picking cards, all of that. That's just, how MMA YouTube rolls nowadays, or has been rolling for the past 2 to 3 years. And I will be making a new playlist where I will be putting predictions and reactions, and I will title it Prediction and Reaction Slop. Predict Slop, React Slop. I'll call it something like that. But anyways, thank you for listening. Because you're not watching this, right? You're not actually, looking at the screen. You're just listening to it in the background while playing video games. I know what you're doing, okay? You're either playing video games or doing the dishes. Or maybe mowing the lawn. Who knows? But yes, those are all my predictions. And there's a solid chance that I get them all wrong. But hey, whatever. Goodbye.